Hi, my name's Graham Sandersfield. I'm the Learning Development Manager with the Diocese of Sheffield. And as the slide suggests, this video is about roles in designing and delivering an online course. Just by way of introduction, I don't want to overcomplicate this process, but I am aware that there's a huge variety of different types of courses based on the style and type that you want to achieve, the length, the budget that's available to you, and the required standards that you want to achieve. And just to say also that not all of the roles I'm going to talk about need to be performed by different people. In my particular case, I tend to perform most of these roles myself. It depends on your skill set, the people you've got around you, your budget, of course, but I don't want to put you off designing and delivering online courses, but these are the sorts of roles I'm going to describe in whether it's a big course or a small course that you'll have to fulfill in some level to some degree. So let's get going and have a look. So we're going to be looking at the design stage first and then the delivery stage later on, but the roles for the design stage would be, I'm just going to fly through them and then unpack them a little bit later, but you need a subject matter expert, you need an instructional designer, a web developer of some kind, a graphic designer, and then the sort of overall roles that oversee the design process perhaps would be a project manager of some kind, an administrator. So those are maybe peripheral but often quite important roles. So let's unpack those roles as we go through it. So first of all, the subject matter expert. This is somebody who would, it's common sense, but collate the materials, but there are probably a few other roles here in terms of online course design. I think they bring a credibility. If you've got somebody who can create the right materials in the right way and perhaps they're known in their field, or it isn't just anybody putting together some materials. You need somebody ideally who can bring credibility. Sometimes that's not necessarily a person. It could be you're using a book or video resources or something to pull the material together. But ideally it's material and content that you can really rely on, and the people who are going through your course can rely on it as a credible source of information. That could obviously be in-house people or external people. Partly that's dependent on budget and favour and people that you know, but obviously you can decide that as you go through the process. You need them really to specify the learning objectives. So if they're pulling the material together, often they'll be the people who have the idea of what you're trying to achieve at the end of it. And so they should at least support or help in creating learning objectives of the course. They would also be involved or totally pulling together and curating recommended learning resources, not just the content necessarily, but they could be creating, say, a reading list or links to other resources that you may want people to look at. Maybe if you want them to dig deeper into the subject, I'll at least give people that option to be able to curate those resources and pull those together. Is really good thing to ask people to do before you let them go, and just ask them to do that as well. And just for them to work with the instructional designer, I think is important, because I think if you just let people loose to create content and materials, and then they're not thinking how those materials are going to be presented and what the flow is of those materials, then you'll miss out perhaps on their knowledge and understanding, and the content could be misrepresented and misapplied, and I think you need to work together on those things with the instructional designer. Speaking of which, we'll have a look at the instructional designer's role. So they would design the flow and the sequence of learning, so how the materials are going to be presented, in what order, and in what size chunks as well. So I think they really need to have a reasonable understanding of, let's say, pedagogy. It could be, you could define it as andragogy, but you know, how people learn, the psychology. Often it's based on the understanding of how your particular audience will need to learn, and that could be younger people, older people, people with a lot of experience. Is it going to be collaborative approach, or is it going to be individual learning? So all those that approach needs an understanding of or some understanding of how people learn, particularly online. Need to decide, this person needs to decide on media and learning objects. So you know, how to mix up based on people's different learning styles. You don't just want text, you may not want any text, you may want to do it all by video or audio, podcasts, links to other sites. There's lots and lots of ways, as you can imagine, of presenting online materials, and that needs to be adapted and shaped around the audience needs, the participants or student needs. Work with the web developer instructor. So the person who's going to be delivering this needs to be involved at this stage, ideally, and the web developer, let's call them, that could be a really a lot of work for them to do. It could be very minimal depending on your platform that you're building it on. But if you're wanting to achieve a lot of things that maybe can't be achieved technically, then you need to know that at this stage. Or you might actually be limiting yourself to things that you think can't be achieved, and the web developer can say, oh yeah, I can do this, that or the other. So working with them at this stage would be a good thing to do. You need to also think about the design evaluation process. That's it's important that you evaluate your learning, so that process needs to be thought about at this stage. It's a really important part of designing the course, so that you can improve on it as you go forward and hear from people of what their experience has been. Moving on to the next person or role. Web developer, as I said earlier, this might be very minimal if you've got a really good platform set up, or you've got some basic web design skills. Like I have a few, like I can do a little bit of CSS styling, I can do a little bit of HTML. I wouldn't call myself a web developer, but I can get by. But if you're wanting to create lots of functionality that you haven't already got developed, then obviously you might need support in you will need support in doing that with expertise. But if you're building it on a well-established platform, then maybe it's more about web authoring rather than web development. But the sorts of roles that they could be involved in develop functionality to make something work really effectively, technically. Content and web authoring, then you may need help to make things look nice on the page and that sort of thing, but again, for the navigation and the whole thing to work intuitively as intuitively as possible for the participant. Support with HTML and CSS, that might be a lot or a little, and for them to think about an effective flow and navigation so that people can easily find their way around the site, and possibly help create learning objects. I mean, that might be things like videos. You may need the help of somebody with wider skills than purely web development, but that sort of person often has those skills that they can help you with animation perhaps, or creation of videos. The next person would be a graphic designer. Again, it could be a really big job, this, on an online course, or it could be a small input or no input at all, depending on what you're trying to achieve. But I think trying to make things look nice and represent, say, graphs or diagrams or processes in a particular way, it's good to have somebody on call who's got a really sharp eye for detail, colors, the way things, images and processes are represented. So yeah, they would be responsible for designing the look and feel of the site, fonts, colors and images and style generally. Create the graphics that you need to go on, and do an image search. I think graphic designers are really good at finding good quality images that represent the content that you're trying to get across. Just quickly through the other two peripheral roles. Project manager, this could be a really big job depending on the size, the detail, the standard that you want to achieve. But this role would ensure deadlines, expectations and standards are monitored throughout the project, from the start of it right through to completion, launch and evaluation. The administrator, don't overlook the fact that a lot of these projects, design and delivery of online courses, does need an amount of administration, so communicating with the different people with the different roles that I'm outlining now, and starting to think about a database of how you're going to monitor people profiles in terms of the details, the contact details, registration, enrollments. So starting to think about that, creating the database. So we are now moving on to the delivery stage of the online course. So we've got it designed, it's all set up, but obviously it needs delivering to the participants, to the students. You would need an instructor or a facilitator of the course. Again, it depends, is it a synchronous course, an asynchronous course? Is it purely e-learning where you might not have so much of an input from a facilitator? I'm totally aware that maybe you might run an online course without any facilitation whatsoever, but it's generally not as effective and not as ideal, but sometimes that's what you need, and that's maybe all you need. But there may also be tech support requirement, so in most cases there is tech support need, admin support and learner support. So those are the key roles for delivery. So let's unpack those a little. Instructor or facilitator, they would be there to welcome and orientate people, to motivate them throughout a course. I think is important to find out what, maybe what problems they've got and try to resolve those. Apply the learning material to real life. I think that's a very important part of their role. And to probably encourage collaboration, so it isn't just like in school where the teacher tells you what's what. The experience, skills, understanding of the group is probably, maybe in a lot of cases, even more important than just the input from the instructor. So moving on to tech support, why do we need that? Well, I think part of it would be to try with tech support at either the very basic level or quite a detailed level. What are the expectations of tech support? How often do you need them to be available? To what level? How quickly do you need them to respond to problems and issues? In my case, it's usually me that provides the tech support along with everything else, but it might be that you ask somebody else to help with that in your team. There needs to be clear channels of communication, like how do they contact somebody with their problem, and how can they do that effectively and quickly. Moving on to admin support. this is an important role in that it frees up time for all of the other people involved in the design delivery. This person would manage the database, enrollment, so what are the details of the people doing the course, and are they enrolled and registered. To track processes, so you might be asking them to do things, upload assignments, fill in feedback questionnaires, just complete watching and learning certain sections. Have they achieved? Are they up to date? So there's a monitoring of that. That might be the instructor, the facilitator. It might be other tutors, other mentors, but it might be an administrator as well. To communicate with learners and staff, so there might be announcements, changes to the curriculum, etc., or if it's a blended learning course, when you're going to meet, or if it's on Zoom or something like that, what the Zoom codes and Zoom passwords are. So some communication, and to possibly be the first point of contact. So got a problem, I need to find a solution, and it could be on lots of different levels, and the administrator can direct them to the right people often. And to help out or to totally manage the evaluation process. There's work to do there, so you get good solid feedback and input about how the course has been received, and has it met its learning objectives. Learner support or a mentor, so this is a role to treat learners as individuals. So I think a tailored approach really, to not just treating people like everybody's the same, but treating them as individuals. So what are their learning needs, and what's their background, and they might have particular accessibility issues, with hardware or software or competency or language. So I think having somebody to support learners as they go through is important. Assess and address their needs, we've talked about. To support and encourage, sometimes people, particularly if it's online, people often need supporting, helping, encouraging, motivating. And to help contextualize, I think it's a case of, well, you've learned this stuff, how are you going to apply it to your particular situation, often in a church, or if you're a youth leader or whatever, how are you going to apply it to your situation? And so you're walking alongside them, really maximizing the content, the stuff that they're learning, and how to put it into real life scenarios. So that is everything. Hopefully that's been really useful, and any questions, please get in touch.